Alright, I'm going to do a quick video to show you what kind of EQing and EQs we use on this broadcast template every week. So this is kind of our simplified, this is something I've simplified down even though it still looks a little bit complicated. It's something that I've just thought, you know, let's take some stuff away, make it a little bit easier to understand and mix and make adjustments on the fly. So, oh, we're still playing. Okay, so this is a rehearsal from December 12. It sounds alright. I mean, it's not our best, but it's alright. So let's play a little bit of, let's go to That's the Power. I think this is the bridge. And have a look. So, let's just have a quick listen.
You still do miracles. You will do what you said. For you're the same God now as you've always been. Your spirit breaking out. Your kingdom moving in. Your victory claims the ground that the enemy had. You still do miracles.
Alright, so it sounds pretty clear. I mean, I didn't actually mix this. I can't remember who did. Well, I kind of can. But anyway, it's just a quick kind of run through of just to explain stuff more so. So on our SSL channel, I've chucked this on almost every channel. So it's on all of the band, all of the drums. It's not on that SPD, but you know, you can track that on if you want. It's on the bass, the guitar, acoustic, keys, and all the tracks. It's also on all of these vocal verbs. What's this? Ambient mics. And that's pretty much it. So it's as if you're plugging into an SSL and, you know, tweaking it. And you've got kind of limited options available, but it helps you to sort of really get to the bones of what you want without having too many options and getting confused and losing track of where you cut and where you boosted and all of that. So our kick, you can see there, I'm just boosting a little bit in the, what's this, 4.7K range. I'm cutting in the 1K range and boosting in the low 68 range. 68 I find is a really good range to boost in the inside kick. Outside kick, boosting a little bit lower, cutting and keeping the top neutral. So basically you can approach this EQ with starting at the filters and then work your way down to your boosts and cuts. So you've got four EQ sections here. So you've got your highs, which is a shelf usually, and you click the bell and it will become a bell. Let's have a look, see if it gives us some graphic about this type of thing. So you can see there, if ever you get confused, click on that little question mark and you can open up the manual and actually do some reading. So the default path actually goes through dynamic first because it's one of those vintage setups where in the beginning they thought, oh, let's use dynamics and then do EQing, but modern type of stuff actually does it in the opposite way. So filtering EQ and dynamics is what you might find in most modern consoles. But anyway, that's the original. It also shows you all the different things that the different buttons will do, using the filter to control the dynamic side chaining, pre-EQing. What is this? Okay, they're using the EQ as a side chain. That's, yeah, cool. Using filter and EQ as a side chain. Anyway, but what else has it got here? Here we go. EQ section controls. You've got your low and high pass. That's the filters up the top. That's these two buttons here. And then you've got your high frequency. And again, yes, it turns it into a bell. And without that, it is just a shelf. The high frequency is just your typical bell, I guess, and so is the low, is a bell curve. And your low frequency, low mids, you got low mids and high mids. And you've got lows, which again is a bell if you turn it onto bell, and it's not a bell, it's a shelf if it's not a bell. Does that make sense? Let's have a look at a plugin that shows us what the difference between a bell and a shelf is. So if we make a point here, this is a bell, okay? And I can right click and turn the shape into a high shelf, and it's shelving up or down all the high frequencies. Boo, boo, boo. And I can turn it into a low shelf, and that shelves all the lows below a certain point and with a certain Q range. Anyway, that's a great plugin, but we don't use that. That's FabFilter Q3. So that's our main EQ that we use. All right, so basically the first thing I'm going to do with most stuff is cut out a whole bunch of lows other than bass and maybe kick. Everything else, I'm trying to make a lot of space for that stuff to be in its own kind of register. All right, so rhythm guitars, I let a little bit more lows in. Acoustics, cutting pretty hard. Cutting, let's have a look what we did with keys. Yeah, let a little bit more lows in with keys, because they do tend to play some low notes, but it also with that keys too, there's some keys players that like to really send a lot of high end. Actually cutting it out to 4K. Okay, so yeah, basically just don't want that stuff. Not good. Not always. Sometimes it's great, but if it gets up past sort of 10K, you know, all that stuff is very, very, very harmonically rich and sticks out like a sore thumb. You've really got to rein it in. So that's our SSL EQ. So let's have a look at another EQ here. We've got the API 550B, and there's a few other APIs accessible. We've got the 550A, which only has 3 bands, and you've got the 560, which is a graphic EQ, which is fun, but yeah, again, want to keep it simple, cut it down to basically 2 or 3 types of EQs. So API 550B gives us 4 bands. It doesn't give us a low and a high cut, which is actually probably a good idea. But anyway, this still sounds fine. It still sounds really good. So Phil's leading the song, so I'm going to solo him. And let's have a listen.
You still do miracles.
Yeah, cool.
You will do what you
So I
say.
think he was playing guitar, and he's smashing this guitar. He's going ham.
You still do miracles.
That's kind of, well, yeah, anyway. So this top knob here is kind of always set to 10K. 10K, 12K is a little bit too high. 7K, I'm kind of addressing that with this knob. But 10K, it is always a shelf, this top knob. So it's a top shelf adding. I usually add between 2 and 4 or none. But usually with a dynamic mic, you want to add back that top end that the dynamic mic isn't giving you. And you kind of want to cut away a lot of the low end that the dynamic mic overly gives you, because it's proximity effect gets bassier. Yeah, anyway. So that's our top knob, is just a shelf. Second knob here is set to 8K. Sometimes I do at 5. Sometimes I switch it to a... Actually, I probably should switch it to a notch or a bell. Anyway. But yeah, you've got the option of another shelf there that you could double up. Gives it a little bit, you know, it's different.
You still do miracles. You will do what you said. For you're the same God now.
So if we stick it to a notch, or you know, a sharp bell, it gives us a little bit more cut through everything else. All right, so our low mid knob is usually sitting around between these three frequencies, is what I find. So I want to cut out some of the boxiness or the nasally, low nasaliness, and Phil and sort of Aaron, they need a cut at around 400 or 500 or 700.
You still do miracles.
So actually kind of sounds all right. But yeah, I do also have this one cut, so I'll just set that to 0. Let's have a listen.
You still do miracles. You will do what.
So you can see if I boost those frequencies, let's try 700.
You still do miracles. You will do what you.
They're not really the frequencies we want. Doesn't sound too bad at 0, but if I cut it, I actually give it a little bit more room, you know. It's not so much, it sits in the mix better. So let's try it.
You still do miracles. You will do what.
So 500 to me sounds like if I cut that, it's going to sit better in the mix. But that's just my ear. You might hear something different. Let's have a look at the lows. So again, can be a shelf or a notch. Yeah, let's have a listen.
You still do miracles. You will do what you say.
So when Phil's using it as a handheld, like he's holding it, he holds it pretty close to his face and always really delivers a lot of volume and a lot of bass. And that's a good thing because we'd rather have that is more consistent than not have it and it go in between being thin and thick because the vocalist maybe pulls away when they're not confident. We want our vocalists to really just hold the mic close and deliver a lot of good depth through the microphone that we can control. And yeah, so we cut back on 400 on a shelf because these microphones, if we just look at it, let's just turn this off for a second. Actually, I'll pull it down here and we'll go through Fab and we'll have a look at what kind of frequencies he's delivering.
You
So you can see there, this one's 260, this one's 6, coming down to 500. See, that's why I cut 500. I felt like that made it sit better in the mix. But basically what we're trying to do is, excuse these, is we're trying to take this dynamic mic and make it sound a little bit more natural. So they deliver a whole lot more bass below 1000 and they don't always deliver the top end above 1000 as well. So we basically tilting it, shelving up 10k, 8k, cutting 7 or 500 and cutting again and giving you a, well, let's turn this into a shelf. Just give you a visual representation of what this would look like. Shelving 400.
You still do miracles.
Basically, we're trying to tilt the microphone to sound more natural. But anyway, that's that. And if we did use Fab Filter, you know, we'd have probably just way too many options, but we could do that, totally do that. Anyway,
you still do miracles.
So when I listen to a vocal, I'm trying to listen to what I know their voice to sound like and what I can hear that it should sound like through the microphone, and I'm trying to take away whatever the microphone isn't giving me and yeah, basically reshaping that into something that's natural and then shaping it a little bit more to make it fit in the mix a little bit better. So let's see how he sits in the mix.
You still do miracles. You will do what you said. For you're the same God now as you've always been. Your spirit breaking out.
All right, so I feel like he fits in the mix. I feel like it's clean and clear. And those are the two EQs that we use most of the time. So if you can understand them really well and you can sort of mess with those frequencies that we're looking at, they're usually pretty the same. 500, 400, 8K, 10K, 8K, 10K, 5. Yeah, I've basically dragged this same setting across. But yeah, have a look at the frequencies and take note of them before you change them, and you should be fine. So that's EQing.